Aspect Coaching.
Welcome to Reigniting You, the show that explores a variety of topics and timely issues for making successful mid to late career transitions with a renewed sense of purpose and fulfillment for the next phase of your career and life, regardless of your age. Now, here's your host, Lisa Downs.
Welcome to Reigniting You, where we talk all things career transition for those age 40 plus. I'm Lisa Downs, Seattle-based career and retirement transition coach. Happy to be here with you and our producer, Eric. Hey, Eric, good to see you, and Merry Christmas.
Hey, happy Wednesday. Happy Christmas Eve.
Yeah. I guess it is. Yeah.
That's right.
We've got a cool, sunny one today for a nice winter day. And
we do, yeah. A little bit chilly, but
crisp
beautiful.
out there, but beautiful day. And I'm so glad to have you here listening to us today. So as it's the fourth week of the month, it's time for our Best Job, Worst Job episode. I'll be sharing listener stories, career tips, and some career news headlines on today's show. And we'll get started with that right after this first break.
Climbing the corporate ladder used to lead to success and a satisfying retirement. That ladder is now broken. You want to succeed today. Stop playing by yesterday's rules. 5 out of 6 millionaires started their own business. Now you can too. Introducing FranNet, your local franchise resource. With enough franchise options to fill CenturyLink Field, FranNet will help you find the right fit to realize your dream of being your own boss in a successful business. Be in business for yourself, not by yourself. Charlie McGee can help. Learn more at FranNet.com.
Hi, I'm Lisa Downs, career and retirement transition coach and host of Reigniting You on KKNW. I guide age 40-plus professionals to gain clarity, a renewed sense of purpose, and a career transition plan within 90 days so you can lead a fulfilling life regardless of your age. No longer does change have to mean riding off into the proverbial sunset. Let's talk about what your next phase of life can look like. Visit yournewaspect.com or call me at 425-216-3015. That's 425-216-3015. New Aspect Coaching. Fresh perspectives for your career.
Alternative Talk 1150. Local talk for the body, mind, and soul.
Welcome back to Reigniting You, the show that focuses on all aspects of making mid to late career transitions. Thank you to our sponsor, FranNet, your franchise experts. And it's time for some recent career-related news that you may have missed amongst the vaccine, government, news, and other headlines. According to the RV rental company RV Share, demand for recreational vehicle rentals is up due to the need to socially distance and the increase in working remotely as the pandemic has turned RVs into ultimate home offices and a way to travel without stepping on a plane. So this means campgrounds need to be prepared to handle increased traffic for the foreseeable future, too. RV Share says they saw the most bookings this year from frontline healthcare workers who are using RVs to isolate themselves to avoid cross-contamination of COVID to family members. A recent Boston Consulting Group COVID-19 employee sentiment survey of over 6,000 workers in the U.S., Germany, and India shows that 50% would like flexibility in either where or when they work or both. Most of the respondents, about 83%, also say they've been at least as productive, if not more so, working remotely as they were before the pandemic. Despite the big increase in remote work this year, employers don't seem to be talking much about flexible hours as well, so it'll be interesting to see if traditional work hours start to go by the wayside too as the pandemic drags on and afterward. From the Wall Street Journal, chief financial officers in the U.S. are currently optimistic about an economic recovery in 2021, expecting increases in employment levels, wages, prices, and revenues. And this is in spite of concerns over increased labor costs and tax rates potentially. The U.S. economy grew in the third quarter by an increase of 7.4%, recovering about two-thirds of the ground lost during the pandemic. So perhaps the anticipated $900 billion relief bill just passed by Congress will have a bit of a positive impact too, as long as that continues to look like it will go through. United Airlines is welcoming the relief package as it will allow them to recall some furloughed employees, at least offering temporary employment through the end of March to thousands of people. This is due to the extension of the payroll support program as part of Congress's action. Additional features of the pandemic relief deal are $82 billion in aid for K-12 schools and colleges, $20 billion for the purchase and distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, $25 billion in rental assistance for individuals who lost a job, a paycheck protection program that enables small businesses to apply for additional loans, and an expansion of SNAP benefits by 15% for 6 months. Lastly, the Bureau of Labor Statistics says that employment in healthcare occupations is unsurprisingly expected to grow 15% by the year 2029. And this is a much faster pace than average for other occupations and adds about 2.4 million new jobs in that time frame. With the current state of affairs, this could be even higher given the shortage of medical professionals, so something to consider if you're looking to change industries. And it doesn't mean you have to be a clinician. There are also plenty of roles with doing administrative work, IT, and support roles that could be good options too. So, Eric, a few additional good news stories for us since the end of November. What are your thoughts on these?
Well, I got to say, I had no idea that there was a RV sharing company, and I think that's a great idea.
Isn't that cool? I saw that headline, and I was like, wait a minute, what's this? Yeah.
I might have to look into that because I've never wanted to own an RV, but wouldn't mind maybe trying one for, a camping trip or something at some point.
Yeah, Chris and I have talked about that. It's, it'd be fun to rent one. I don't think, we wouldn't want to own one either and have that expense, or, we don't really we're in a townhome. It's not like we have room to park an RV anywhere either, but, it'd be fun to do and to do a vacation. But I found it really fascinating too that healthcare folks are using it as a way to isolate.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, I think so. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And
so I generally find that the stuff that we're seeing here is all kind of positive stuff, and looking towards 2021, things, maybe I say maybe because you just never know anymore, but things are looking like they're maybe turning around a little bit. Yeah,
maybe a bit. So, a bit of a turnaround, hopefully positive. Of course, with the CFOs, those are, the folks surveyed for that tend to be in the bigger companies, the corporations, Fortune 500. But, if they're also feeling optimistic about where business is headed and, the potential recovery and hopefully that leads to being able to hire more folks.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that the corporations and businesses that are doing the hiring are also agreeing with their employees that they're being as productive, if not more so, working remotely, because I think that can solve a lot of the issues that we have in society if people can continue to work remotely if they want to. I'm talking about stuff like traffic and extra pollution and stuff like that, which would be reduced by folks working from home. And, those flexible hours, I think, would be great for folks too, because not everybody physically is on the same schedule, I think. So, you could have somebody that does a much better job if they're able to start at 11 o'clock than if they're able to have to start at, say, 9 o'clock, So.
Yeah, for sure. And I saw too, so as part of that story, part of that article, that, a lot of it is that people are, that what they're doing, and I do this too, is they're incorporating a lot of the chores, so the things that you would do at home.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, those who have childcare or elder care responsibilities, having to do that stuff during the day while they're home as well. And so, wouldn't that be nice if it was just agreed upon that, you had deadlines that were set
Yeah.
And then the hours that you work to accomplish those deadlines and to get those results and meet those deliverables was more flexible rather than, oh, I have to be online starting at 8 a.m.
And I think
Yeah.
this it may be something that we'll see more being offered as a benefit as things start to tighten up with hiring once again, that they can offer folks, that they have more flexibility in their schedule. That's a benefit that I haven't seen too much of. Often it's the medical and, 401k matching and stuff like that, which is all great stuff. But, having that flexibility, I think, is a great thing to offer folks as well when possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great employee benefit to have. And I know my husband, so he's a Microsoftie and so, when eventually down the road they go back to allowing folks to come back on campus to work, they're, basically being offered, do you want to work at home some of the time, and basically have like a 50-50 split where you could, share that. So part of the time you go in, part of the time you're working from home, or do you want that to be more of a 100% situation? And I think right now he's leaning more toward the 50-50, to get out of the house, and he would lose his office if he,
Did it 100%.
did it 100%.
Sure. Yeah.
And, he would want a place to be when he is on campus. So I think he's kind of leaning more toward that. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, can it be offered, as you said, as more of a benefit
Right.
and some flexibility there. It'll be really interesting. I'm so curious, if we kind of project a year from now, what workplaces will look like.
It's so hard to say.
So hard
but
to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and office space and traffic, as you mentioned, and will be really fascinating to see.
Yeah, I imagine it will be some kind of hybrid of what we have now and what we had in the past,
Yeah,
So
yeah, I think so. Yeah, absolutely. So it's time for our next break already. And when we come back, I'll share a couple best and worst job stories from listeners with a few tips for you and also preview what's coming up for next week's show.
Are you feeling challenged or frustrated without a plan for what's next in your career and life? Are you seeing writings on the wall for needing to make a mid to late career change and don't know how or what to do? Coach Lisa Downs of New Aspect Coaching can guide you to what's next, providing a fresh perspective and supporting you to create a clear and compelling vision for your future and a plan to move forward. Call Lisa at 425-216-3015. That's 425-216-3015. New Aspect Coaching, fresh perspectives for your career.
I'm Nathan Mumm, and I'm the host of Tech Time Radio. Tech Time Radio is officially on KKNW from Saturdays from 4 to 5 p.m. You can listen to our show live. We are excited to also then rebroadcast our episodes on Thursday morning from 6 to 7 a.m. The hosts cover top tech stories with a funny spin.
That's good. So, Hooked on Phonics worked for you, didn't it?
It did, just a little bit. Grab your weekly technology without having to geek out.
Yeah, I can imagine.
We talk technology for the everyday common person.
What's your story? Have you ever sat with that question and looked to your heart for the answer? It's time to explore the real you. Tune in Thursdays from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. for the brand new show, Story You, with Coach Debbie. Debbie and her guests have a mission to inspire and coach you to find your voice. If you need direction, Story You with Coach Debbie is for you. If you want to be an author, Story You with Coach Debbie is for you. Tune in Thursdays at 4 p.m. and be inspired. Have a career transition related question or want to share your best or worst job story? Call 360-436-6496. That's 360-436-6496. Just leave a voicemail and we'll answer your question or share your story on a future show. Stay tuned for more Reigniting You with Lisa Downs.
Alternative Talk 1150. Talk radio for the body, mind, and soul.
Welcome back to Reigniting You, the show that discusses timely issues and topics about career transitions for Gen Xers and Boomers. I'm your host, Lisa Downs. We're continuing our episode that's focused on listeners' best and worst job and career stories, a regular feature of the show, the fourth week of each month. I'm here with our producer, Eric. So, Eric, I'm also thinking of adding maybe a first job story piece to this episode each month, this segment. So
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, so I'm curious about what was your first paying job that you had?
Boy.
Way back when?
Well, I think it was actually babysitting, but as far as actually working for a company, I worked for Kenny Shoes as a stock boy. I don't know if you remember Kenny Shoes.
I remember that brand.
Yeah, they used to be in all the malls around the country. I started as a stalker and then ended up becoming a salesperson. And that was tough because I don't consider myself a good salesperson. But I did okay. Okay. But then eventually things were already, even back then, kind of slowing down for Kenny Shoes. So ended up getting put back on stock boy duty so they could get the guy that they had stocking before me to do more sales. And then eventually he ended up moving back to stock boy and I ended up going somewhere else. But, it's just changes were happening for sure already with the mallscape.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I remember that brand. And also Tom McCann. Do you remember Tom
McCann?
Yep,
Tom
brand?
McCann, yep.
Yeah, and I was cracking up. Do you watch Stranger Things? I watched it on Netflix. I'm a Stranger Things fan. And
that's set in the 80s for anybody that doesn't know.
I had to laugh because in the last season where, everything happens at that mall. And then they had a Tom McCann store and Walden Books.
Right.
And, these other brands that just are gone and disappeared a long time ago. I was like, oh, Tom McCann.
It was Walden and B. Dalton.
And B. Dalton.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was pretty funny. And well, thinking back to my first job, I had unpaid first ones as a pet sitter for a next door neighbor. And I still remember, and they were great people. And they had for a while they had a bird and his name was Walter. And so I would go over to their house.
What kind of bird?
Like a brown.
Okay, so not like a talking
bird, not
parrot
like a talking,
or
no,
whatever.
not not one who talked. He was a small brown and beige bird, and kind of like a finch or one of those types of birds. And he was pretty cool. But I still remember being instructed when I was a kid of how to blow the feathers out of his little food dish and how to refill the water for Walter and put his cover on over his cage. But paid job, my first one was actually for my parents. So my parents opened a travel agency, and back in the 80s. And,
back when there was travel agencies.
When there were travel agencies. And so I was like the stock girl, speaking of stock people. So I was the stock girl for all the travel brochures and would sort the mail and kind of keep the place cleaned up and client customer files kept. And I was like a file clerk and brochure girl. And I don't know how many travel brochures I would stamp with the name of the agency on it. And
that sounds like it might have actually been kind of fun
because
you get to learn about all these different destinations and maybe daydream a little bit about traveling.
So it's kind of fun, and to see all the companies and what they were offering for travel and deals and that kind of stuff.
Now, were you in high school like I was?
I was, yeah. So I was in high school. So they opened that my sophomore year of high school. And so worked there, and then summers until I went off to college. And so that was mine. So I'll
as
be
first jobs go, not bad.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah,
could go home, with my parents and afterward. And so it was a pretty easy gig, I will say. So not much, pretty easy. So so I'll be soliciting our listeners for their first job stories too that we can incorporate. So that should be pretty fun. So it's time now for a couple listener stories. Just a reminder that you can submit your best, worst, or first job story by emailing it to reignitingyou@gmail.com or leaving a recording of it over voicemail for me by calling 360-436-6496. That's 360-436-6496. I'll then share it live on the air at the end of January, and you don't have to use your real first name. You can use a pseudonym, but first name and location would be great, too. So our first story is from Allison in Bellevue, who shares that her worst job was working as an associate at a call center for a major retailer not so much because of the calls from customers, but more because her supervisor and other managers didn't really know how to lead. So there was a constant pressure to get the numbers up in terms of metrics for things like average call time, net promoter score, and client satisfaction or customer satisfaction, but no real guidance or support for how to do that exactly. So they would just walk around saying stuff like, gotta do better or get those numbers up. So thanks, Allison, for that. And I can definitely relate. I heard that a lot when I used to work in telecom. And yeah, so not exactly helpful feedback. So it is tough, when leaders in an organization aren't either well trained or necessarily have the skill set to provide good coaching and feedback that's clear and good guidance. So for those who are leaders or aspire to be, I would implore you to please don't talk in generalities. So really important to set clear expectations with employees, provide clear, specific feedback, work with your folks to really talk about where the gaps are and create a good plan of action together. And then as an employee, if you're ever in that situation, I'd really just encourage you to raise this type of thing with your boss too. So, ask what specific feedback do they have or what are their specific thoughts on how to improve those results. It's the same with, getting appreciative feedback too. It'd be the same thing. It's like when people walk around and say, good job. And then, you have no idea for what, so it's like, okay, no clue what I did, but thanks, I guess. So, nice and specific. So as you continue with your careers out there, or, if you are a people leader, please be specific when it comes to feedback and expectations. And, if people need to improve their results, improve their performance, really work with them to find out what's getting in the way of that performance and then what can be that go forward action plan, because otherwise just receiving that generic feedback is not helpful at all. So thank you, Allison, for sharing this. So our best job story comes from Michelle in Everett, who shares that it was when she worked at her local library as a student. She enjoyed helping people find resources for their research, use the computers, and reshelve the books, DVDs, and other materials. And it provided her with a sense of calm and was a great fit for her introverted personality. So thanks, Michelle. I appreciate that story, especially as a fellow introvert. So I'm a classic introvert too. So I get up for the social stuff, the people things. I have in my work sometimes very extroverted activities that I need to do in my work, but I'm with you there. I'm a classic introvert who needs to cocoon at the end of the day and appreciates that quiet time too. So it's important, I think this raises an important point here with your story. Really important that we do work that suits us well, in terms of our personality and how we best work. And we can't really be forced into extroverted work as introverts and think that that's going to go well. So, we can do that for a bit of time. But if it's continuous, day after day after day, that really does put a lot of strain on us when we're doing work that's against our natural type. And it's the same with extroverts. So, I know a number of folks here this year as we're going through the pandemic and have had lockdowns and quarantines and working from home have really struggled because they're not able to have as much of that person-to-person interaction and hardly any of it in person. So everything's done through a screen. So unless, going to the grocery store or seeing the doctor, and, that's not very exciting. But, regardless of whether you're an introvert or extrovert, it's really tough to work against your type and being pushed to do work opposite of that over and over. That can be really exhausting and draining, especially over that lengthy period of time. So, we tend to have our best luck with jobs and roles that do provide an opportunity to get outside of our comfort zone and yet not be, it's not, completely unsuitable. So kind of finding that happy medium, because it's fine to be, pushed and stretched, and we want that, and that's how we grow. And every job, every role has both introverted and extroverted activities tied to it. So, always good to get that type of balance, I think. So Eric, what are your thoughts on these stories today?
Yeah, I totally agree that, finding something that works with your personality type is so important, as far as for remaining happy. I think a lot of people could fake it,
Yeah.
in a role that they, took for whatever reason, just because they needed the job or because the benefits were too good to walk away from. But there is something when you find that simpatico position between your personality type and what you're expected to do. It's a really good feeling.
It is. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and thanks for that. And thank you, Allison and Michelle, for sharing your stories for our listeners to hear your perspectives. Remember that if you'd like to submit your best, worst, or first job story or have a career transition question, you can send that all to me at reignitingyou@gmail.com or call 360-436-6496. That's 360-436-6496 to leave me your question or story over voicemail. Would love to hear from you and get your input, and I'll share all of that on a future episode. So it's time today for today's Reignition recommendation, your weekly career transition tip, and that is to focus on only 2 or 3 short-term goals in the new year that you can realistically accomplish, such as milestones toward a larger goal to give you a greater chance of success. In this time of year of New Year's resolutions, remember that resolutions are changes in lifestyle or habits, and that's not the same as goals. So the average resolution only lasts about 2 weeks. Instead, think about what are a couple goals that can get you to where you want to be that also energize you for 2021. Well, thanks, Eric, for your help and support today, as always. Hope you enjoyed the stories, both from the news and our listeners today.
Absolutely. I love hearing from the listeners.
Yeah, and hope you have a great holiday.
Thank you.
this
You
week.
as well.
Yeah, and join us next Wednesday at 3 o'clock when my guest will be Nancy Appelman-Vassell of the APLS Group, who will be here to talk with me about the importance of lifelong learning for career transitions and for our continued health. Thanks for joining us, and happy holidays. We'll talk to you next week on Reigniting You.